Well, hello and welcome to the Re-applicants Learn How to Make Your ADEA application stronger presentation. If you've clicked on this presentation, it's probably for one of three reasons. The first is that maybe you've clicked on the wrong presentation, so you were looking for a different one. And if that's the case, I hope that you're able to find the presentation that better fits what you were looking for. The second group of people who might have clicked on today's presentation are individuals who have never applied through the ADEA application process, but are already anticipating that they may not get the outcome that they were looking for, and so have came here for some re-applicant tips. If that's you, I hope that's not you. I don't think that's the best way to approach the application process, but if that is you, I want to tell you, hey, you should focus on being the strongest applicant you can be now and less on the re-applicant phase at this point. The third group of people who probably clicked on this presentation are the ones that I really want to direct this information towards, and these are people who've applied through the ADEA application process in the past, and they didn't necessarily get the outcome they were looking for, and so they came here to look for some advice and tips on how to strengthen their application. And so to you, I want to say, hey, welcome to this presentation. I hope it's helpful. What I want to start out by saying is that I hope to give you some strategies and tips and things like that, but this presentation is not to be comprehensive. So I hope to give you an idea of some things that you can do, but I don't plan to cover everything that you could possibly do to improve your application. So know that there's more work for you to do outside of this video, but hopefully this video can give you some good starting tips and ideas and things like that. Okay, with that being said, let's get into it. Well, before we get started, let me take a second to introduce myself. My name is West Parham, and I'm the Director of Dental Admissions at the UMKC School of Dentistry. If you didn't know, that's home of the Fighting Kangaroos, and I know to many of you all, you may not feel like a kangaroo is that intimidating, but I bet if you found yourself in Australia at night, you might rethink that. So I just wanted to start by saying this topic that I'm discussing today is important to me, and that's because part of what I do as the Director of Dental Admissions here at UMKC is for those individuals who apply to us who don't necessarily get the result that they were looking for. I actually sit down with them and have a one-on-one meeting with them to discuss what they can do to improve their application if they're interested in doing that. And so this topic is important to me because I want to see students succeed. I want to see them reach their goals, and I want to help them do that by helping them navigate how they can strengthen their application from one cycle to another. And so I want you all to know this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and one that I hope that really helps give you some good information. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of techniques and strategies that can be used to improve your application from one cycle to the next, I wanted to just speak to those of you all who may have found your way to this presentation because you are a re-applicant and just say, hey, know that you're not alone. You know, every year there's around 12,000 dental students who apply for dental school. There's usually around 5,500 to 5,700 spots, which, if you think about the math of that, it essentially says that less than half of all applicants are accepted each year. And I said all of that to say something that you already know to be true, and that's that dental school is competitive. It's a competitive process, and for many students, it's a multiple cycle process. And so I don't want you to look at yourself and think, hey, I'm in the re-applicant position. This is a reflection on me or a reflection on my application. It's not. Keep pushing towards that goal. Don't get disheartened, but work harder so that you can eventually reach that goal of being a dental student and being a dentist, which is what we really want to see for you and you want to see for yourself. So as we get ready to jump into these steps about how you can move to improve your application from one cycle to another, the very first step that I want to suggest to students is don't assume, ask. And when I say that, what I mean is that there's really two different kind of phases or components to that. The first thing that I mean by don't assume, ask is before your application process begins. Don't assume that you know what it is that a particular dental school is looking for. Ask. A lot of times it's easy to feel like the dental school criteria mimics or is the same for several different dental schools, and so you kind of have a good idea of what dental schools are looking for. The truth of the matter is that every dental school has their own nuanced criteria, their own set of values, the things that kind of drive and govern how they function and how they move. And it's important for students, if you want to be convincing or you want to be attractive to those dental schools, to know what those things are. So don't assume, ask. Most schools will have like an admissions office or an admissions officer or counselor or whoever who is willing to sit down with you and talk with you about the things that the dental school is looking for. So don't assume, ask before your application process even begins. But in the same way, the second phase of that is don't assume, ask in terms of after you've applied. There's so many times when I'll sit down with students after the application cycle and they'll be convinced that had they just done better on their DAT, then all of a sudden their outcome this time would have been better. And I tell them, hey, a lot of times it has nothing to do with your DAT score. Sometimes it's so many other things that the committee is looking for and criteria that they're evaluating. And if you assume you know what it is, you might go into the next cycle and have the same issues persisting on your application because you didn't take the time to ask. So don't assume, ask. Most dental schools have a process where they want you to call in and speak to them about how you can improve your application. So don't assume, ask before you apply, and then don't assume, ask after you apply. We want to communicate with you. Our goal is to see you reach your goal, and so don't assume, ask. The next step in improving your application from one cycle to the next is don't get comfortable, go above and beyond. And the reason I say that is because if you follow the last step and you don't assume and you ask and you call the school, you find out what area it was that you felt like you didn't necessarily perform the best in, or that they felt like you didn't necessarily perform the best in, it's easy to begin to think that as long as you work on that area for the next cycle, then that's going to be your year. You're going to be in good shape. But the truth of the matter is, you don't know, just like the admissions committee doesn't know, what the application pool or what the application cycle is going to look like from year to year. And so if you get in this position where you get comfortable with how your application looked in one year and then you improved in that one area, then you were really limiting yourself, because each year you're going to have a set of new applicants and a new pool who are looking to improve their application in all aspects. And so I say, don't get comfortable, go above and beyond. If you talk to the committee and they say, hey, you know, it was your academics one year, don't think that just because you improved your academics that you don't have to consider your additional shadowing experiences or your dental investigation experiences. When you think about your personal statement, one of the biggest things the committees are looking for is how have you grown over the past year. Your personal statement should not be the exact same from one year to the next, because it doesn't say that you made any progress in your application or in your development from one year to the next. The same with your letters of reference. You have to think about who have you interacted with over the last year that can write a letter of reference, or if it's the same writers, what can they talk about that you've done over the last year? You don't want all of your application to look the same. So don't get comfortable with what your application looked like because you asked and you found the weak area. Continue to improve and push forward in all of the various areas, whether that's leadership or letters of reference, community service, academics, whatever it is. Put yourself in a position where your entire application is being improved. So focus on the area that you discuss with the admissions officer or the admissions committee, but recognize that that's not where you need to stop. You need to make sure that you are moving your application forward in all aspects. Don't get comfortable, go above and beyond. The third step in improving your application from one cycle to the next is making sure that you check in and follow up along the process. Now, I know that sounds like a basic concept that doesn't seem like it's really going to do much good, but there's really three things that come out of a check-in and follow-up that can be beneficial for students. The first is that it makes sure you understand what information was provided to you in the way that the admissions officer or committee wanted you to get it. When they said academics, were they talking about you retaking your DAT, or were they saying that you needed to take a full college semester? Were they saying, when they talked about your dental investigation, were they saying that you needed more hours or that you needed more specialists that you needed to see? When you follow up and say, this is what I've been doing, then we can make sure that you're on the right track and that me and you, or the admissions officer and you, are on the same page and getting the same information across to you. The second benefit that comes from that is the relationships that's developed. You know, one of the jobs of us as admissions officers or admissions committee members or whatever it may be is to advocate for students, but we can't advocate for students that we don't know. And so that relationship is built when you follow up. I can see your consistency, your persistence, your character, your personality, all those things that make it easier for me to advocate on your behalf. And then the third benefit that comes out of that follow-up is that it lets the committee and the admissions officers know what your plans are. A lot of times what happens with me is students come and visit and they talk with me and we talk about what they need to do, and then I never hear from them again. So I don't know if they're planning to follow up, if they stopped, if they're planning to reapply again, if they thought dentistry wasn't for them, whatever it is, I'm not able to have that information. But when you follow up, the committee can have an idea of what your plans are and what steps you're taking moving forward. The last step I want to talk about in terms of improving your application from one cycle to the next is it's really kind of a nuanced step in that it's not designed to make your application stronger, but I do think it's designed to help you as an applicant put yourself in the best position. And that's really, don't limit your options. I know a lot of times it's easy to lock onto a school. You get your favorite school, your number one school, and that's the school you want to pursue. But what you have to understand, as I shared before, is that dental school is competitive. And because it's competitive, a lot of times it's not an issue of whether a student would be a good fit, but really an issue of whether or not there's a capacity for them. And so what you don't want to do is put yourself in a situation where you haven't given yourself options that are available to you. So research all the schools that might work for you, whose criteria you fit, and make sure that you apply to them as well. So don't limit your options as you're moving forward in this process. Well, that brings this presentation to a close. As I shared, I wanted to just give a brief presentation that can tell you some things that you might think about in terms of strengthening your application from one cycle to the next. If I said something that you wanted to hear more about, or you have some questions for me, I've put my contact information up there. I'd love to hear from you in any feedback you want to provide. So thanks for being here, and I hope this was helpful.